Hey, you got to watch this one. It's episode 31 with Erik Curtis from encurtis.com. And he is a professional furniture builder and content creator. And it's amazing how he blends the two. So check it out. Hey, everybody. This is another episode, actually episode number 31 of Festool Shop Talk. Today, we are so excited to have Erik Curtis with us. That's Erik with a K.
Good man.
And yeah, not bad, huh? my original questions and outline, I had to change them. There's our application specialist here at Festool. That's how he spells it. I think it's a cool name with a K.
It's not bad.
Not bad. Okay, so you can find Erik really quick on IG at Ian Curtis, on YouTube at Ian Curtis, and his website is encurtis.com. So my first question is this. What's the N stand for?
Ooh, I get a lot. Nancy comes up a lot for some reason. I was like, yes, my name is Erik Nancy Curtis. You nailed it.
It's what?
Neil.
Okay. I think you told me that before. Nancy, that's too damn funny. That's so cool. I think I met you about 3 or 4 years ago at a build off in Austin, didn't I?
No, I think we met at Workbench Con for the first time a few years back. We were meandering around. That was the first contact, and then I think after that was the Texas build off. I could be wrong on that timeline in my brain, but I think that's correct.
I think you're right. We met at Workbench Con first because somebody introduced me. That's right.
Yeah.
It told me you went to the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship up in Maine.
Yeah.
But
also,
also,
I think Coffee introduced us.
Who did?
I think Coffee introduced us.
Oh, that's right.
It's all coming back up here, man. Not just a hat rack up top, you know?
Wow. Now it's hitting. So that's cool because I just sat in your seminar at Workbench Con this past weekend, and I was so impressed at how what a great presenter you are, and and we'll cover some of that today. The material that you covered, because I had quite a few takeaways from it from a business perspective in furniture building, because I come from that, and I was like, oh yeah, I did that, but I did it a different way. So you'll see as we go through this.
Yeah.
So wow, wicked cool to have you on here, sir.
Wicked great to be on here, brother.
Yeah, baby. All right. So if you've done podcasts, which I've known you've probably done 100, Erik, let's warm everybody up and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in woodworking, or maybe some of the schooling that you had, and how long you've been doing this.
Sure. So I grew up in construction. I was building things all my life. My father was a handyman, a maintenance man, was always building engines, building decks, doing rough carpentry, built a bookcase when I was a kid. And I distinctly remember like the moment I knew I was going to build things for a living. I was in sixth grade. Sixth grade had just ended, and the middle school got out a week earlier than the elementary school, which is like all of my friends, the guys on the street, were all in fifth grade. And so my dad and I, in that week, we rebuilt our back deck. And I distinctly remember being like, this is way better than being in school. Like I never want to sit at a desk again. Like this is what I meant to do. And from there, it was a series of refining the thing that I wanted to do and build. Again, grew up in construction, got jobs on job sites as a carpenter, learned plumbing and electrical, did that all through my teens and into my 20s. And another one of those clarity moments was, I think I was 20, and I was lying in bed with my then girlfriend, who was gracious enough to watch woodworking DVDs with me. Because for some reason I had found furniture and I was like, oh, this is super cool. And I got the issue of American Woodworker where Paul Seller's sample DVD came in the mail when he was coming out with that couple of books, Woodworking 1 and 2. And I distinctly remember he was cutting edge bandings with just a handsaw, like dental moldings inlay. And he was just doing it so smoothly and so efficiently and effortlessly. And I saw it and I just said, I turned to her and I was like, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And she was like, what do you mean? You're like, what even is that? He's like, just putting fancy things in a table. I was like, I don't know what that is, but whatever that is, I'm going to go do that. And so then it was just this tenacity of trying to figure out how to do it. Because I didn't grow up with any members of the family like in furniture, in art. My mother is a medical technologist, runs a blood bank, and my father was a handyman, like I said. So it's like we're just people who worked. We're blue collar folk, and then I'm in here like I'm being an artist. So then I ended up going to CFC to kind of compress the timeline. I went to CFC when I was 24 and did the 9-month there. And kept going back and did an assistantship and took more classes and co-taught and eventually started doing fellowships and teaching there. And so I've been doing this professionally or attempting to do it professionally for 12 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, where'd you grow up?
Upstate New York in Poughkeepsie. So about 50 miles north of the city.
Oh, cool. And you are where now?
I'm in Philly, which is Philly is like the greatest underrated city in the country, I think. I've been in Philly maybe about a decade over. I went to college down here and then left and then came back. So I think it's been maybe around 10 plus years that I've been here total. And listen, guys, I'm telling you right now, Philly is a phenomenal food town. It's a phenomenal beer town. And it is honestly one of the best arts towns I've been to in the country. It is a city that is littered with murals, with artists that cares about public art, that supports the woodworking trades. It's a traditionally furniture town. It's a phenomenal city. It's a great place to, like, if you want to walk down the wrong street and get shivved at night, like you can also do that. But it's a great city. So
that's a prison term. Shiv. Oh, 20 years ago in the Guild, my buddy was talking about something and like a big splinter, and my buddy Kim, he said, that's what you would call a shiv. And I looked at him, I go, prison time? He goes, no, I watch a lot of real crime. I go, okay, Kim.
Oh, all right.
Oh, cool, man. So you answered one of my questions, how long were you at CFC? But how many years have you been involved with them now?
Oh,
with fellowships
since the beginning. What happened was when I decided I wanted to be a furniture maker, I sought out people to get advice from them. Like, how do I break into this industry? I don't know anybody in this industry. How do I do this thing that I just randomly fell in love with? And I eventually ended up talking to who was then the director of the Philly Furniture Show. His name was Mark. I wish I could remember his last name. And I basically just asked him point blank, like, how do I break into this? And he said, go to school. And not because you can't learn the craft without going to school, but because the people that you meet and the connections that you make while you're at school is going to be the thing that drives your career. And he was 100% right. Every single positive thing that has come about in my career has been a primary or secondary connection to CFC. And so I keep going back there because it feels like at this point, like kind of like a home base, like a creative safe space. You know, I've known that school for so long. It's a small community and I can go back there and I can take 2 months, 3 months and do a fellowship and like make the dumbest, weirdest things. And the community of support and Yuri Kobayashi is the primary example of this. She's first of all, one of the baddest people on the planet. Like, she is incredible, but is also an immensely kind and knowledgeable teacher. And we've had conversations where it's just like the progression that she's seen me go through over 12 years is like, those are super valuable conversations. And I feel like that's part of the reason I keep going back, is to remind myself, like, there's always going to be farther places to go. There's always going to be ways to push yourself. But I think it's important to reflect on the fact that, like, we all go through journeys. I've gone through a journey, and the amount I've grown over 12 years is not insignificant, and it's easy to lose sight of that.
Yeah, for sure. I've always said this in life: it just takes that one person you can lean on, a mentor. Who would you say in your life, in woodworking first, and then in overall life, who are your mentors?
Ooh, I think it's hard to maybe nail down just one. I mean, Yuri is definitely up to the top of the list.
Yep.
I feel like I have mentors in different arenas.
Okay.
So for learning the craft and understanding the importance of being efficient in your work, Alan Lewis, the teacher, my teacher in the 9 months, an incredibly patient, kind human being, helped me to learn the value of, like, how do you make products that people will buy rather than just like the dumb things you want to make that are in your brain. You know? Yuri is definitely the person who has pushed me the most creatively and has been like, you can learn how to be creative. Because I don't think that I would label myself as a naturally creative person. I think it's a skill that you develop and unlock. At least it was for me.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I mean, as far as like the social media aspect of it goes, Annie of all trades, she has been the person who was at the very beginning, like, get over yourself and start posting on Instagram. And that was in 2018. And, here we are now as a full-time content creator.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That was crazy. It was interesting in your talk this past weekend, how be patient with me, because I'm trying to remember exactly how you said that. I have two businesses that are separate, but they work together.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I always had a cabinet business, and when I see what social media does and how you are able to present a client that you have with permission, it's like we used to carry around this big book. We called it our portfolio as we were selling something or doing something, so they could see our work. There was no internet. Oh God, I'm such an old guy. There was no internet. There was just pictures, but people got it. We could show sketches and stuff like that to entice them. And I will ask another question in a little while about that, because, or mention something, because it is really, you made one comment. I went, oh man, I wish I would have said that, but, or I had done that when you mentioned it this past weekend. So in saying all of that, how do you break it apart? And I have a question here. How do you approach that client relationship? Because I know you do commissioned work. And
I do. And I used to hate commissioned work, honestly, because I think and somebody asked the question in that talk about, like, we've all had to make the thing we didn't want to make because we have bills to pay. And I hated doing that. Not even because of, like, my ego and wanting to make the things I want to make, but I felt like I couldn't do it well because I couldn't be inside their head and I couldn't see what they wanted to see. So there's no way for me to give them what they want. So at this point, the way I approach a client, or when a client approaches me, is basically we have a conversation. I ask them 3 questions. I ask them, do you have any visual, inspiration for the piece you want me to make? Well, first of all, what is the piece? Is it a table? Is it a chair? Is it a cabinet? Those all have kind of industrial standard limitations. And then I say, all right, visual inspiration. Is there a piece in my portfolio that you want me to kind of riff off of? Like, why are you coming to me instead of somebody who can do it faster and cheaper?
Right.
And then I say, what's your timeline? Because I can almost certainly guarantee that I'm not going to meet your timeline.
Yeah.
And then I ask them what their budget is to see if we have realistic ideas, because there's no reason to put off that conversation. I don't want to have 5 meetings with you and then find out you're trying to pay me $500 for, a settee. Yeah. So it's a back and forth. And then once we establish all of those limitations and I feel like they understand my process and I can work it with them and deliver something that they're happy with, then I ask them for more or less complete creative freedom. And I say, the thing that I can guarantee you is I will make the best object I can make in the moment I'm making it. But that's the only thing I can guarantee. Wow. If you want me to make a table, it'll be a table. I just have no idea what that table's going to look like until I'm actually making the thing and it's becoming a table. Yeah. If you're uncomfortable with that, that's totally, I absolutely understand why some people are like, can't do that. I get that. Yeah. I'm not your guy because I can't work to speculations either, because what I mean specifically by making the best object I can in the moment I'm making it is I need to be able to be present with an object, look at it from sides and say, this one detail isn't working like I thought it would in the drawing. So I'm going to change it now. And I'm going to change it hopefully for the better. And I need you to be okay with me making those tweaks and those decisions.
Yep. Yeah, because then you're in hold time if you have to go through them back and forth.
Right.
And when you were talking about that, I was like, I remember the time that I was building something, and this is where I learned to keep my ego and my taste at check, because the customer is the customer and it's what they want. And they chose a color palette on something. And I was like, I went to Marianne, my wife. I went, this is disgusting. And she goes, and it was just a small rustic pine piece for a country shop that she worked part-time for. And so I brought it. And you remember when somebody asked you in the audience, have you ever surprised somebody? And I went, yeah. Well, this one I left and ran, and because I knew they were coming in about an hour later. Yeah. And I'm on the phone with her. I go, ooh, did they like it? And she goes, they were crying. I was like, that they didn't like it?
Right. Happy tears or sad tears? Where are we at?
Oh my God. And they freaked out. She goes, it was tears of joy. And I was like, so that's me saying, hey, and coaching people over the years, it's not about you. It's about the customer.
Right. That's an important thing to remember. And that's a hard thing to remember because we all get into that moment where we're like, this is going to be terrible. Like, this is going to be trash. I made a piece, same situation. I made a piece early on in my career when I first opened my business for a customer they showed me a picture from a Pottery Barn catalog and they said, I want you to make this table. Now, at this point in my career, I go, okay, run. Like, I know that. But at that point, you're like, I need to make money. Like, I need to figure it out. So I made this piece. It was a reclaimed teak piece in the catalog that had been whitewashed. They didn't want to pay for teak, so we decided I was going to make that oak. I made this farm style table, beat the snot out of it with a toothing plane, a scrub plane, chains, and whitewashed it. And I went to deliver it and I had it all wrapped up and I was terrified because I was like, this is the ugliest thing I've ever made. Bar none. And I unwrapped it and she literally cried. She literally tears of joy. And I was like, I don't understand human beings.
I don't either. It's crazy. Okay, so this is the $100 question I've been waiting to mention to you because of what you said this weekend. Somebody asked you a question in the audience that said, how do you charge? Okay, so I'm going to go back almost 20 years ago in my business. And they would go, oh, you selected, I'd be there and showing the bid or our quote to the customers. And I would say, how many of I'm bold. I go, how many quotes you get? She goes, about 5. I go, I'm the highest, aren't I?
Yeah.
And she goes, you guys are. And I go, and then, whatever, because it was all word of mouth. Yeah. And she goes, well, what do I get above and beyond with yours versus the others? And I would point to my business partner. I go, you would get him. And she goes, what do you mean? I go, and me, but both of us will be thinking about your job as we're building it, probably a month ahead of time while we're building somebody else's and how we're going to do this. And I learned early on, it's called billable time. And that's what attorneys do. If they think about a job, they bill that time. And what you said was so enlightening. You charge by the week. Because you're always thinking, I can't tell you how many times 2:00 in the morning I'd wake up and I would just jump in the car and go down to the shop. Because I was always thinking about it because I wanted to deliver it. And when the customer understood that, we were usually always the highest bid or quote. And I'll tell you, they would take us because of the way, and I hate saying this, but it's true. It's the way you sell yourself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, salesmanship is a skill that needs to be developed if you're going to be successful in business. That's just bar none. But that's kind of part of the reason I developed the charge by the week thing is I know myself and I know that I work obsessively, compulsively, like whatever you want to call it. And then it becomes an issue of, all right, how morally, ethically, can I charge a client because I'm obsessed with this piece and thinking about it, out in the middle of the night? Or like, if I need to develop a design and I'm just walking around the streets of Philly, like trying to figure it out in my brain and like trying to get forms down, like how do I charge for that? Because that might be me wandering around, like listening to Alan Watts while I'm like thinking about this concept about life in the universe. And then I go, oh, this is the idea for this piece. So like, is it client work, So that's why I developed the weekly charge, because within that range, I know that I can say I can get the work done and I can work as many hours as I feel I need to work that's appropriate for the piece until I feel the piece is good. And then that feels more comfortable than me saying like, all right, well, I accidentally charged, 15 more hours this week. And now we're going to have that conversation about why that price keeps speaking up.
Yep. It's but to make sure that the client understands that is so important. I was like so impressed you told people that in the audience, because I'll tell you what, you had everybody glued the entire time. They couldn't wait to start raising hands on you to ask you questions. And it was really good because you can articulate in a very confident way because you've lived this. And I think the advice you were giving everybody was so sound. It was really, really good. I
appreciate that. I've lived it, but I've also failed it. I think that's a thing that doesn't get articulated enough. And I wish that I had brought this up early on too. Like when I opened my business out of school, I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't even know how to design things. I knew how to build things, right? But I hadn't developed a style or a vision, and I certainly didn't know how to sell myself. So the first couple of years were an absolute struggle, and it got to a point where I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't want to do it. So I went back to teaching, and I allowed this thing to germinate, this seed to grow more slowly. And that's how I developed my pitch to clients. That's how I developed charging by the week. And I gave it time to grow organically rather than trying to force myself to be a businessman. But I think so much of finding what works for me now is figuring out what didn't work and failing that first time.
Yes. Yeah. Fail forward, as I always say.
Yeah.
In certain iterations, I call them certain chapters in my life. That you go back to all the time and go, oh yeah, I can live off that, not dwell in the past, but understand the past. So you try not to make that same mistake, and learn from it. And you said something also, find your voice, enjoy your journey. And that's what you were just mentioning. Yeah, you can't believe I took all these notes, can you?
I mean, I appreciate it, but
I told everybody this. My takeaway from Workbench Con was you and Michael Alm. He's a great presenter too. But he was talking about your brand and creating
I was
content.
in that talk, for sure.
Wasn't that great?
It was phenomenal, Michael.
That was a great
I take it as an immense honor to be even grouped in the same, conversation as Michael, because he is, I think, one of the most competent designers on social media, like who actually is using social media as a business tool. He's incredible, and he's the nicest guy on the planet. And his talk about growing your brand was spot on. And it was funny. I was talking to him afterward, and he was like, "This is just basic, like design school 101." And I was like, "Yeah, but so many of us don't have that. Like, I didn't go to design school, So like it was brilliant information, and he presents it in such a way that's digestible for people.
Yeah, it was really cool. That it was neat to see that because of his, he's a sculptor, his background, right? Design sculpting, and his sculptures are gorgeous. That rabbit I love. But the thing he mentioned is, he goes, I had to disassociate myself and have somebody else create a logo for me. That was mind-boggling. Here's a guy with all the design background. It was just neat to hear him speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another one. How'd you get the Netflix gig? Because I heard somebody in the audience say Emmy award winning, and I thought, okay.
God. No, that wasn't somebody in the audience. That was Larissa trying to troll me.
Was it Larissa?
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
So actually, fun fact, last night we were in the shop and my Emmy came. So we opened it up and we were like gawking at it.
Dude, get out.
It's wild. But that's neither here nor there. The Netflix thing taught me a super valuable lesson in what I say is just not caring. And what I mean by that is I went into that experience. So, all right, for those of you who don't know my timeline or me at all, I was a teacher, like I said earlier, for 4 years. I was teaching wood shop, and I was starting to grow my social media. And at this time, I had like no followers. I don't know, a few thousand followers. It wasn't a very big account. And Netflix happened to reach out to me. Like I had a few different casting agents reach out and be like, "Hey, you look like you build things. Like, do you want to come try to be on this show?" I'm a very stereotypical looking carpenter. Okay. And so another one reached out. We went through the table read, and the whole time I was sitting in there, I was like, "Oh, I'm not getting this part." Number one, because I'm nobody. I'm just a teacher. And number two, like Mike Montgomery was in there. Simone Gertz was in there. A few other folks who were just huge on Instagram and YouTube. I was like, oh, one of these guys is going to get the part for sure. So when we went in and did the table read proper, because we were rotating in and out, I was loose as a goose because I had no care in the world because I knew I wasn't going to get the part. And so I ended up getting the part, obviously. And then when we went to film, it was the same thing. I was very upfront with the director and the producers. And I was like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been on TV before. The other three have. Danielle has an Oscar and a Tony. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So just be cool. And they were like, not a problem. So I went in feeling free to be a beginner, and I didn't care. And I also didn't realize the extent to which like my role on the show would be driven. The narrative would be driven around that. In retrospect, it's a building show. I should have seen that coming, but because I didn't know, I was loose. I felt like I was, there was no stakes in the game. Yeah. And it ended up, being successful, and I'm very grateful for it. But that taught me a super valuable lesson in that I do my best work when I remember that the thing isn't important. And I don't mean that in a nihilistic way. What I mean is, Nancy asked a question when I was giving the talk of like, why do you identify as a furniture maker when you've done all of these other things? Yep. And that's specifically why I do that, is because the idea of trying to be a Netflix star, pretending to be a Netflix star, trying to be a social media personality, that brings in all of these pressures of trying to be like everybody else. Yep. And what I know about myself is, as long as I can continue to create things out of wood and interact with this material and identify as a woodworker, then everything else is superfluous. None of it matters. And that allows me to be looser. Like when I was doing the talk a couple of minutes before, I was just telling myself in my brain, sure, there's going to be however many people were there, 100, 150, I don't know. None of it matters. It's just giving a talk because I'm a furniture man. I'm not a public speaker. I'm a furniture man.
Yeah.
So that's a long-winded way of telling you how I got that. It was a ridiculous experience.
No, but it's great because when you are, I like the way you said that, loose as a goose, you have nothing to lose.
Right.
And that's how I got the job at Festool. They interviewed me, but at the end I interviewed them. And I was told when I pulled out my tablet to ask all the questions, they when I walked out of the building, which was a little strip mall across the cornfield here, they said, yeah, hire him. Well, it's just nice to hear that because I had nothing to lose. I was on vacation. Right. I had a cabinet shop. I was successful in Fort Lauderdale. And I even asked the question, so when you send out offer letters, when should I expect it? I was the hubris of it was unbelievable.
Right. You know what that is? That's the experience of sales right there, though. That's what you're selling yourself. You know?
Oh yeah. And somebody looked up. He was the CEO at the time. He goes, Monday morning.
Yeah. Nice.
I got back in the cab and went home. It was funny. It's that confidence, I think, that you should, when you know what you know, but people don't know, you think they don't know, but then you start talking and you fall into that, that confidence. I think that it shines and shines and shines.
I think the confidence is super important to understand what you do, but I think it's also there's a fine line between that confidence bordering on arrogance, right? And I think, in my opinion, what separates the two is I always get empathy and sympathy confused, but I'm going to guess it's empathy and understanding that everybody's process is different and people can be successful even if they don't do it the way you do it. So I'm confident in telling folks how I have had some modicum of success, but I understand that like what I want you to do, I don't want you to follow the thing that I've done. I don't want you to follow my path. What I want you to do is pick and choose the things that will be helpful for you and then find your own path. That I think is where you're going to be successful.
That's right. Just keep being yourself, as I always tell people, because people will, don't be phony, be yourself and all else will follow. Follow 100%. Your passion. 100%. Cool. Okay. I got to ask you a Festool question. Let me look around.
Sure.
When did you first start using Festool? Where did you learn about it? Where did you first see it?
2012. And we had a conversation about, the domino and given CFC and this kind of, it treads it's one of the few schools in the country, I think, that really walk the line successfully between like, should we be making furniture super traditionally, or should we understand and embrace the fact that like, if you're going to run a business, you have to make things with some efficiency. And so we had a lot of conversations about the domino, and I stand on the fact, and this is not because this is a Festool podcast. I have said this on my YouTube channel. I've said it on Instagram. I've said it to people. I genuinely believe the domino is as important to the progress of the small shop as was the table saw, the bandsaw, and some of the other, like the hollow chisel mortiser, like these tools that allow the small, like 1 to 5 man shop or 1 to 5 person shop to work at an efficiency level that is on par with the larger shops that can afford pieces of equipment that are $10,000, $20,000, $100,000.
Yeah, I take it a step. When I first started with Festool, I called it cheating. But domino was cheating. If you've ever used a mortising chisel, what I call the pig sticker, and a hand saw and a shoulder blade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, but I loved it because it took mortise and tenon or loose tenon joinery to the masses, and it made it accurate and efficient. And yes, that's really cool because they had that there. I saw something where the guy's a hand tool fanatic and he was doing some drawers, and somebody called it out on the picture, and he said, hey, this is a piece I need to knock out.
Yeah.
And that domino joiner is perfect for it.
Yeah.
So it has held its ground all these years. I'm still so impressed with it.
I mean, it's also one of those things for the folks who want to argue against it. It's like floating tenons, loose tenons were a thing for hundreds of years before the domino came out. All it is a mechanized version of it.
Yep.
So take a deep breath. You're going to be fine. We're going to get through this together.
Cool. Oh my God. Let's see what else I got here. So in your businesses, one is commissioned work, and the other one is content creation, right? Social media influencer. What are your biggest struggles trying to keep them separate or keep them combined? Maybe we should talk a little bit about that. Like, do you ever have clients that say, no, I don't want anybody to see this or the process or anything?
No, I've never had that because the majority of my clients these days find me through social media because furniture shows, if they're not dead, they're dying. Right. So I think it's just advertising. It's the freest, advertising platform out there. So I've never had that. But what I have had are clients who want to be surprised and they don't want to see it. And so that's an interesting thing to do, because then I have complete freedom. They might watch it after, but I have complete freedom to go through the process knowing they're not seeing it. And it's the closest thing that I've ever had to like just working in my shop alone, like the client doesn't know what's going on. So that's an interesting experience. But as far as trying to keep them separate, like the reason I say they're two separate businesses running simultaneously is because they're two separate streams of income, first of all. But they also require different thought processes. They require, like when I'm dealing with social media, I'm thinking about how do I tell a story visually? How many posts am I going to get out of this piece? Brand relationships and that level of salesmanship. And developing those brand relationships, that all takes a long time to build up. And it can be kind of independent once it gets going. Like whether I'm doing a commission or not, my content business is thriving. Whereas the commissions are very personal, very spatially important. So I always try, if I can, to be in a space where the object's going to live before I make it. And if I can't do that, which sometimes I can't, I just try to ask the client to give me as many pictures as I can. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing for that side of my business is the object. The object always has to come first. There is nothing that I will ever make, regardless of which business is for it. There's nothing I'll ever make that will be, quote, camera ready. It will be a done, complete, as close to perfect as I can make it piece of furniture. And then, like I said, the content side of the business is flowing regardless of whether, what the commission side of the business is doing.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Oh, cool. So you have a shop in Philadelphia? Sure do. Is it a standalone shop by yourself, or do you share it?
No. So first of all, it's an old textile factory from the 1800s. It's
wow.
It is. So early on in my career, maybe like 2013, 2014, I'd been 2014 when I started working for Lee Nielsen, because I think that's how I got hooked up with Roger. My buddy Roger, who runs Rico Brooklyn, which is a sawmill and furniture place in Brooklyn.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. Roger's the man. If you know him, you need to talk to him. He's the dopest human being.
I used to, when I first started in 2017 on Instagram, I loved their feeds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they make cool stuff, and so they take a bunch of trees that were naturally felled in New York from, know, whether it's damage or weather or what have you.
Yep.
They mill them up, and so they can sell slabs to people from their own neighborhood in the city, or they can get commissions. Furniture. So I was working for Roger for a couple of years, and at that point, he was in a different location. He was up on the 5th floor of a place down in Brooklyn. And I was fascinated by it. Like the city shop, the old industrial building. I was like, this is chaos, but there's always people around. There's stimuli around. There's people to ask questions, bounce ideas off of. And so I always wanted a community shop, not a place to be for the next 50 years, but for a period of my life. And so when I was setting up this shop, I was like, that's what I want. So we found this old industrial building, this old textile factory. We're up on the 3rd floor. We've got, I think, around 1,750, 1,800 square feet. And I've got 2 shop mates, Larissa Huff, who is an incredible furniture maker and human being, and Amanda Russell, who is also the same, and everybody knows and loves both of them. And I love being in a shared space because there is what I never wanted was to isolate myself in a shop, but so there's 2 distinct advantages to being in a shared space. I think number one, sometimes you're just stuck. Then you need to just say like, hey, I don't know where to go with this. I don't know what I'm seeing. I've been looking at it too close. Can you give me a bird's eye view? What are you seeing? Am I right? Am I wrong? So getting feedback from people is huge, but also just the communal aspect of it. Like having friends in a shop. So last night we were all hanging out. We got some work done during the day, and it was coming to the evening, and we needed to do a little shop maintenance. And Larissa and I haven't seen Amanda since we got back from Workbench Con. So we just ended up like kicking it, drinking a couple of beers, playing some darts for like an hour. And it's like, that's the kind of thing where even when you're not working, it's a space that you want to be in, which encourages you to be in it more, which is encouraging to do more work. Like it's a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, no, for sure. I always, I had a business partner. We were sharing a space, then we ended up being, combining our businesses together. But it's when I was stuck on something early on, I would say, how would you do it? And vice versa. And then in the industrial area we were in, I think there was another 5 shops. So if we were stuck on something, we'd go across the parking lot and ask, hey guys, how would you do something like this? And vice versa. It was just a nice community of shops in Dania Beach. It was cool.
Yeah.
I like that because I'm not isolated in a small shop somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm a social person. I really hit that midpoint between being an introvert and an extrovert. I enjoy my alone time, but if I'm alone all the time, I would die. So being around friends and having the ability to just like, but also the value of, so Larissa and Amanda and I all run our businesses independently, right? Yeah. We're not running one business together. So the value of being able to like bounce ideas off of each other on how to pitch to a client or like what companies to try to reach out to get brand deals, like those are all super valuable too.
Yep. Oh, for sure. For sure. That's funny. It should just bring back so many memories of shops. Yeah, it's like right when you think you walk into a shop, it's 1,800 square feet. You go, oh, it's gonna be plenty of room. Next thing you know, it's like, oh my God, I need more room. I need more room.
Within 6 months, you're like, oh, I think we need to expand.
yeah, that's for sure. Okay, another question I have. So think you've done this throughout the podcast, but what is some advice you would give somebody first starting out in woodworking? Say they come out of a furniture building school or a trade school, or they're in a job now, say software, or they're an attorney or something, they want to get into woodworking. What's some sound pieces of advice you would give them?
All right, so we're limiting this to not to people who want to do content and furniture,
Nope.
but just people who want to build furniture.
Yep, just people who want to build furniture.
The best advice that I could give anybody in that situation is to take the time to find your voice. Figure out what avenue that you can take to allow yourself the time and resources to build a portfolio that when somebody looks at an object, they go, oh, that's a Sedge object. That's an Erik Curtis object. Because that is the thing ultimately that is going to draw people in to your business, to you as an artist. And it's crucially important. And it takes a long time and a disparate amount in type of objects. One of the best kind of points on that, the interview that I heard was with Billy Joel. And they were talking about how like Billy Joel has a very distinct sound, right? Like you hear a song, like I know this is a Billy Joel song. His point was, I don't know that I have it. I don't know what my sound is. What I do is I hear a genre and I try to write a song that sounds like that artist in that genre. And because he's developed over the decades or had developed over the decades such a distinct style, like that automatically gets kind of transfigured into a Billy Joel song somehow, even if it's like, a Motown or blues rock or like early 90s, right? Whatever it is, like that has that sound, but he can't really identify what his sound is. And I feel like that is my goal similarly as a designer. And when I take on a commission and somebody's like, I want you to make this piece, I kind of just go, okay, I'll just make that piece because I know by the time I'm done making that piece, it's going to look like the thing that I interpreted it to be.
Yeah, it'll be Erik Curtis piece.
And ultimately, like, I mean, I don't think I've gotten there yet, but ultimately that's the goal, is to have somebody listen to your song and they go, oh, that's a Billy Joel song, or look at a piece and go, that's an Erik Curtis piece.
Yeah. Somebody else had a similar goal. I believe it was Greg Paolini. He said, I go, what's your end game? He goes, I want somebody to, because he specializes in Lindbergh arts and crafts. And he's slaying it down in Asheville. And oh my God, the amount of work that guy pumps out of his shop. Yeah. But architectural millwork to keep everything going, and kitchens, whatever. And he said, I want somebody to look at a chair someday and go, that's a Paolini.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
and he's well on his way to that.
Yeah, I don't know if I can identify that as like that's my goal. But I think that is, from a business perspective, the goal. So I get, all right. So you asked what the advice is, and the advice I gave was like, find your voice. But how do you do that? Like, that's not helpful advice, right?
Yeah. It's be yourself,
Yeah. But I mean, let's be real. There's a lot of people, and myself included when I started, who don't have the resources to say, like, I'm just going to make a piece for the sake of making a piece. Might not even have the money to buy lumber for a piece I'm not getting paid for. So the practical advice I would give in that vein is try to find ways that allow you to get paid for that speculation work, which it might be a small amount, right? It might be a thing where you reach out to a brand and you're like, I have an idea. I want to use your tools to do it. This is what I did with Sabretooth early on. And can I make this thing? And they might be like, sure, like we'll pay you $100, $200. And you're like, but that $100, $200 might pay for the materials. It might pay for the materials in a little bit of time. Like, that little tiny bit of encouragement allows you to make things that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise make, because you have a little bit of skin in the game for it. And those eventually turn into, if you do want to go down the content road, or it might be a fellowship, it might be a residency somewhere at a school, whatever it is. Those relationships develop over time into really important and impactful relationships in your career. So again, if you're just going the furniture route and no content, there are fellowships out there where you can have the time, you get paid just enough to survive. It's not a lot. Like you can eat peanut butter and jelly and house yourself, but those allow you a dedicated time to develop your voice. And doing that once a year for a few weeks or every other year for a few weeks is, I think, crucially important to developing that over a period of time.
That is really good advice. Yeah. I always say you got to kind of suck it up sometimes as you learn, and trying to take on pieces because you are learning through it, but always learn something major on everything you take on.
Right.
And you're not going to be the greatest. You're going to look back on some pieces, right, and go, "Ooh, I actually charged for that."
Right. Well, and simultaneously, you're gonna struggle early on when you do get those commissions, and you're going to be severely underpaid. You know, but I don't think that I could charge a client for my own inefficiencies. So taking those on, trying to make the best object you can at the time for the client, and understanding like I'm going to make mistakes because I'm new and I just got to eat that. Like you're still getting paid to do a thing, That's ultimately what we all strive to do. No,
for sure. And I hated it though when we were in houses sometimes and my business partner would come out and say, "Hey, do we know how to do that?" I went, "Heck no." But we're going to learn.
Oh, those are some of the most fun things, though.
I know, because you really push the envelope.
What I've realized about myself, and part of the reason I love content so much, is it allows me to put myself in that position. Because if I know how to do something when I start it, I'm already bored. Like, this is why I can't do production work. I'm miserable doing production work because I've already figured it out. There's no intellectual stimulation. So when I don't know how to do something, now I'm engaged and excited about it. It's going to be wildly inefficient. I'm not going to get paid enough hourly for what I'm doing. But what's, if I wanted to make more money and do easier work, I just wouldn't be a woodworker,
Right.
So that's all there is to it.
Yeah. I always tell people, I go, woodworking is 2 words in my eyes. It's all about the wood, but there's a lot of working stuff, and people don't realize that. So that's something I always coach people. They used to come into classes here and go, "I think I'm going full time in woodworking." I go, "Oh, do you know it's a lot of work?"
Yeah.
And I go, "Yeah, I just love doing it." And I go, "Okay, but you got to understand, you got to pay the bills, and there's a lot of work involved if you're just getting into it." Yeah. Because it's just not building the project. It's the business. It's the sales. It's, oh my God, it's
that's the hardest thing for folks to understand is when you run a woodworking business, you're not just woodworking, you're running a business. One of the best bits of advice I ever got was from Chris Bexford, or insights, I should say, rather. And I was having a conversation with him at a Lee Nielsen event one time. And I asked him, like, what's your split? Like, you're writing, you're running a business, you're building furniture. Like, how do you do everything? And he said, I work about 60 hours a week and I spend 30 hours a week running the business, writing articles, doing those things. And I spend 30 hours a week in the shop. And that was when I realized, this was maybe a decade ago. That was when I realized, like, oh, it's a 50-50 split. Like, you're not spending 40 hours a week in the shop. You're just not, because you have a business to run. You're spending half your time in the shop and half your time running a business, whether you're doing content or not, right? Chris Bexford is writing for Fine Woodworking and doing other articles and running a furniture business. And he's still like, yeah, I spend maybe 50% of my work week in the shop building.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, especially when and the other part of it is people don't realize documenting what you do inside the shop slows things way down.
Yep.
Way
I learned that hard this year or last year when I dove into YouTube and really started treating it like a business. I did 3 pieces last year. And normally my rate is usually like somewhere in the range of 6 to 8. And then as soon as I started making long form content, 3. Boy. I took 6 months to make a box.
But people don't understand the stop and start of it,
right?
And say, "Oh yeah, I got to do it over, and I got to reshoot it, and then we're in editing, and it gets crazy and crazy and crazy." Yeah, and then it's like I just built something for the house that I promised my wife for 17 years, and someone says, "You got to document it?" I went, "No,
nope.
I want to get it done,
right,
finished."
It's
off
also
my list.
Also, by the way, it's okay to do that sometimes. Like when I go do fellowships at CFC, I intentionally make less content because I think it's also important to separate and go back to the thing and be like, oh, this is just the thing that I love. I love making objects and trying to do things that I can't do and exploring and experimenting. And the moment that you bring the business aspect into it, then it becomes a business transaction. Not that I don't love that, but it's a different mindset. And so I think it's really important sometimes, at least once a year, whether it's scale doesn't matter. It could take you a month. It could take you a weekend to make an object that you're just not going to post, that you're not going to sell. It's just a thing that you're doing because you love doing this thing, man.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's like I see the passion in you. You're still there. That's cool. And it's neat that you walked away from it, you taught, and you came back full steam. Yeah, people have to understand it's a journey, right?
Yeah. Well, and to be completely honest, I didn't want to go back to running a business. I did not have a good experience of it the first time around. I was very happy teaching. It's still to this day the best job I ever had. I loved it. Yeah. But I had the Netflix show and I needed to be contractually available in case we got picked up for a season 2. So in the content business was good enough at that point where I knew that I could take that seedling and grow it. And so I made that decision to do it for 1 year and see where I was at. And I got to the end of that year and I was like, well, I could do this for another year, but I'm going to focus on YouTube. And then I got to the end of year 2 and I was like, oh, I feel like I'm finding my stride. I feel like I found a balance. It's a lot of work, but I feel like I found a way to run this business that is interesting and engaging and that I find fulfilling. And so if that's the case, I'm going to just keep doing this. And I don't know when it'll end. It'll end eventually. You know, there's only so long that you can be like a YouTuber or Instagrammer. But at this point, my thought process is I'm just going to keep doing it till it doesn't work anymore. And if I can find a way to shift it and keep it working, great. But I always assume like there'll be a day where I'm an old man with a gray hair and a beer belly and I'm just teaching, 9 months out of the year. Maybe it's a CFC. Maybe I go like the Krenov route and just become like a crotchety old hermit in the hills and start school. I don't know. But I do love teaching. And I think that it'll come back to that one day. But what I know is I'm enjoying this path. So I'm just going to keep walking it.
There you go. That's a good thought process for sure. Yeah. Enjoy it while it lasts. Who knows? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So is there any question as we start our wrap up, and emphasis on start, is there any question I didn't ask that I should have asked?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, look, we've been friends for a while. I'm an open book. Yeah. And I have been accused of being overly verbose from time to time. So,
join the club.
Yeah. So if anybody is wondering questions that I didn't answer or we didn't talk about, I'm sure I've said it somewhere on the internet at some point.
Yeah,
for sure. I can't think of any.
For sure. Oh my God, this has been so I'm always, because this is our new format that we do this, and I was like, I'm always, when I look up at the clock, I was like, huh? We've been talking how long?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
I mean, you're an easy guy to talk to, buddy.
Yeah, well, it's really cool. I always like hanging with you, brother. Hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for being part of us today. And it's wonderful. And keep doing, please. Keep doing what you're doing and keep passing it on to everybody. Yeah. And it's really important that you keep teaching or emphasis presenting. Yeah. Because you should have seen. I don't know if you saw where I said way out back. Yeah. And I was waiting for you to say something because I was sitting alone, and I wanted you to say, "Hey, Sedge, why don't you come on up here?"
Why don't you have some friends, man?
I was like, I'm sitting back here with all my friends. But it was just neat because I could watch the whole audience. We had a hell of a crowd, and I'm watching everybody going like this. So keep sharing. That's the beauty of you. And I think people are appreciative. And somebody's going to listen to this podcast and go, "Oh my God, that was a sound piece of advice. I needed to hear that." So that's why I love doing. That's why I love doing these.
I appreciate that. And that comes back to what, we said earlier of like, it's just the one thing. It's the one seed that you pull out that you're like, this is a plant that I can grow into something fruitful.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Okay. Chris, we good? I think that's going to be a wrap. I want to thank everybody for listening. You can find this on Apple, Spotify, and the Festool USA YouTube channel. I never did that before, did I, Chris? Not bad. Okay, everybody. Thanks, Erik. That's a wrap.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
You betcha.